Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here for this webinar today. This is our 14th virtual forum where we talk about important topics in college sports. Hi, I'm Tom McMillan, the CEO of LEAD1. And LEAD1 is an organization that works to shape the rules of college sports. We represent the 130 members of the Football Bowl subdivision schools. We reach 85% of the buying power of college sports, 25,000 staff see our materials every day. Point in fact, today we have over 500 registrants for this webinar. So today we're going to talk about an important subject. This is our third in a series of reopening venues. Today we're going to talk about navigating changing behavior in sports fans due to COVID-19, and we're pleased to have Michael Lawrence with us, who's head of industry ticket and live events at Google. And so we are looking forward to hearing Michael's perspective on this and how real-time data is making some impact here. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah to go over some housekeeping items.
Good afternoon, all, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really quickly, just want to take you through some housekeeping items. First and foremost, all those in attendance today, other than Mike, will be in a listen-only mode, meaning you are muted the entire time. That being said, if you would like to ask a question, there are a couple ways in which you can do so. The first would be to use the Q&A feature. This will allow you to essentially speak to both Mike and I during the presentation. When we get to our Q&A session at the end of the presentation, I will read these questions aloud and they will be anonymous. The second way you can ask a question or at least chat with us is again using that chat function. However, please note that anything written in the chat section will be visible to the entire audience. And lastly, I just want to make it clear from the get-go that this webinar is being recorded and it will be circulated via email and archived on the LEAD1 website within 24 hours of its conclusion. So with that, I won't take up any more time. I'll pass it off to Mike and get us started. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Tom. Let me just take a second to share the presentation, and I will jump right in. Yeah, so as Tom mentioned, my name is Mike Lawrence. I work at Google heading up ticketing and live events business. With that, we work with the largest ticketing clients as well as clients in sports, music, and theater performing arts. Up till about March 15th, this was supposed to be probably the banner year for our team as well as most of our clients. Then, of course, things have changed. So what I'm trying to do is kind of talk to people in the industry, and some of you I probably spoke with either directly or through some other means, and provide some of the updates, roughly on a monthly basis about the sentiment of the consumer, potential or future fan, how they are behaving, what type of habits they're forming, and what is the long-term impact of that on live events. We're looking at a number of data. Some of it is proprietary to Google using Google Trends, some other numbers. We also are commissioning some of the third-party data to try to understand deeper some of the sentiment, as well as scouring the web and looking at some of the third-party information that's being put out by a number of other people. What I think it's really important to keep in mind is that it's still a very unclear situation and nobody really has answers. Another point that I like to reinforce is that for me, at least, the trend lines are much more important than any data points. And then finally, data changes very, very quickly. So it's very important to base your decisions on the most up-to-date information. Throughout this presentation, I try to highlight the date that certain data points have been pulled. All right, jumping ahead. Coronavirus outbreak is first and foremost a human tragedy. I know we're talking mostly about economic impact of what it has, what it will have on college athletics, but clearly there's lots of issues that are much more on a human element, which are important to keep in mind. And then finally, there's no playbook yet, and the future will be confusing for at least a while. In addition to COVID-19, as an industry, we also are squarely within the social justice conversation that was brought up by the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think it'd be foolish kind of to try to detach those two. They impact what people are thinking, what people are talking about, and how they expect us as brands and institutions to act going forward. I'll start with some of the kind of the semi-interesting stats that really kind of indicate how people are adapting to the work from home, how they're thinking about reopening the economy, and what are the new habits that they're forming right now that as marketers, we might have to think about breaking down the line to get people, again, excited and willing to come back to experience sports live. Purchases. So early in early April, late March, the households have been stocking up on the necessities. So snack foods, frozen foods, paper products, toilet paper, and we worried a lot. Worried about the economy, 81%, worry about getting COVID, 68, 69%, and then feeling informed and prepared by the media. Interestingly, what we're noticing is that as we're learning more and more about the virus, and as we're realizing that there's still more questions to answer, we might not be stacking up on some of the necessities, but there's still lots of questions out there exactly what is coming next. This is interesting data point looking at the consumers in the US as well as Canada purchasing perishables versus the fresh food products. So 58% of surveyed people indicated that they believe that COVID-19 will last for at least 4 to 6 months and have been shopping accordingly. You see the frozen fruit or frozen vegetables percentages is much higher than fresh fruit and vegetables. So our pantry, in a way, indicates that we are, as a society, preparing for a fairly long shelter-in-place type of situation. And then purchases. For me, what's interesting is people not only search or read up about different things, they actually are investing in different products within their households that they probably will be using even after COVID-19 is behind us. So of course, early on in April, March, the highest percentage increases for purchases among top 10 e-commerce sites were disposable gloves, cough medicine, washing supplies, and so on and so forth. But then there are some interesting things like bread machines, the second largest increase. Everyone I know is trying to bake bread at home. Those bread machines will not be returned, they'll stay at home. When you think about weights or some of the fitness products, Peloton continues to be sold out. Again, people are trying to get their home fitness equipment better, anticipating that they might not be able to return to gyms as quickly as they might have thought. Home office, another category. I work for Google. We already announced that most of the employees will probably work from home for the remainder of this year. And we were given a stipend, $1,000 to improve our at-home settings, to make our work more effective and efficient. And again, those are the investments that will continue to be used even if the economy is completely reopened. Media consumption, something that I spend lots of time following. So initially, not a surprise. People being at home, they still want to be entertained. There was a huge increase in watching TV, purchasing the new over-the-top products, signing up for new subscriptions, anything from Netflix to Hulu to HBO. And then we noticed there was little fatigue. So the increases, so it's still 52% rewatched episodes of an old favorite show, but it was a decrease from 3 weeks earlier. 39% started a new show that did not premiere recently, as we were getting back into the catalog. And then on the music side, again, it's not just listening to the usual music, but rediscovering some of the old music or getting into a newer music. Definite interest in becoming or trying to stay entertained. Outside of TV, some of the online top 5 activities, and you see this is the wave 1 through wave 4 between late March till early May. And interestingly, the short form videos, significant increase as people were leaning into YouTube as well as Quibi, a new platform for the short form video. definite increase in cooking or baking, especially a little later, continued growth in social media usage, some plateauing of TV and music. Definitely there's some fatigue about binging, and people are trying to figure out what else they can do, or they're just trying to figure out how to re-engage back. And with the economy reopening in some of the markets, they're spending little less time at home than they did in the past. We're online more than ever. Just in March alone, there was a nearly 20% increase in minutes spent online year over year, and then 15% increase month over month. So, and we spend nearly 14 hours per day in front of any type of media, anything from TV to digital. Interesting thing to keep in mind is that people consume media differently. So it is definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. You see Gen Z over indexes on things like online videos and TV streaming with some of the gaming, versus boomers, for example, over index on broadcast TV, as well as online press, as they're trying to gain as much information as possible. For marketers, this is an important category, important thing to remember. Figuring out exactly what your audience is and what forms of media to use to try to re-engage with them will be very important in this very cluttered and busy media environment that we're about to enter. Globally, about 40% declare that they are in the acclimation stage. So they have adapted to the restrictions, settled into new routines, and are getting ready for opening up. However, opening up is still fairly controversial, if you will. There are mixed feelings whether it is safe or whether it's too risky to open up. This is a data from late May 24th, and I highlighted 3 markets, UK, US, as well as Brazil. And as you see in the US, about 60% of respondents believe that opening businesses puts too many people at risk, versus 40% that believe that risk is minimal and we need to get economy moving. I highlighted Brazil as well because right now Brazil is probably a hotspot when it comes to the number of new cases, and you see the number is 71% that still believe that there's too much risk for opening up the economy. Having said that, it varies by geography. I think this is one of the very early learnings that we all have realized. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach. There is not a one formula for reopening up stadiums or welcoming your fans back. It really is based on where you're located, the geography, the local health requirements, as well as the local attitudes towards opening versus not opening. And again, this is changing drastically. Right now, there's lots of talk about states that maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago were on the forefront of reopening, cutting down some of the opening restrictions, and maybe some of the other states. I'm based in Michigan, that has been on a pretty tight lockdown early on, opening up a little more aggressively. So that's very fluid, but again, I don't envision a nationwide approach working. It has to be done on a regional level. NCAA, college athletics, actually benefits from that because it's a less fragmented type of institution than some of the leagues, and you are able to a higher degree to appease and to adapt to local requirements. Excuse me. There's definite feel of being connected to the community. Some of the surveys show that 80% of consumers feel more or less connected to their community. And we've seen that happening with kind of showing lots of support with supporting local restaurants, local businesses. 88%, higher number, expect these connections to stay. I believe part of it is due to the realization that people won't be traveling as extensively as in the past. So kind of staying closer, they're trying to figure out kind of how to be closer to the community, as well as facing the pandemic together brings us closer together. If that's the good news, the price sensitivity is probably not so good. Over 50% of general population says they're paying more attention to prices, and that continues to increase slightly week over week. And that's due to combination of the health as well as economic issues that people are facing. We looked at movie theaters as being kind of the proxy, the lowest point of entry for live event or entertainment. And there was a question asked whether people that have attended events, or movie theaters in this case, anticipate spending more or less under the pandemic. And you can see it on the green, 20% indicate that they probably will spend more money after the pandemic than previous on movies and TV shows. 33%, significantly higher number, think they will spend less. And when you look down all these categories, groceries and personal care and medical products were the only categories where people believe they will spend more post-pandemic. All other discretionary income, leisure travel, apparel, consumer electronics, as well as going out to movies and going out, people indicate that they'll probably spend a little less money post versus pre-pandemic, as they anticipate their economic situation to be in a little worse space. Very important to keep in mind as you think about not only pricing tickets, but also looking at renewals for some of the season tickets. Return to life. So I'll speak about college athletics and sports, but I think it's important to put it in context of broader entertainment, because ultimately the consumers have to make a choice and they will vote with their dollars and their time spent on different types of entertainment options that they'll have. First of all, what COVID is doing, yes, it is bringing some of the new challenges to the forefront, but it's really accelerating some of the past trends that have been happening. So anything from live events, the live streaming that has happened in the past, but also some of the issues with younger people not attending as many games as in the past. In theatrical, bringing movies directly to video on demand and bypassing a movie theater distribution is something I'll talk about that is happening. Anything from publishing to streaming, gaming is definitely a winner in this space, as well as pay TV. Traditional linear TV is going through lots of challenges. Big part of it is because there's no live sports right now that usually draws lots of eyeballs, and people opt to buy in some of the streaming services or even going to a pay TV, buy different products, and then bypassing traditional broadcast model. Some of the examples. Early, about 2 months ago, there was a first digital concert. So Super M, which is a K-pop band out of South Korea, had the first digital live stream concert, and they were able to attract 75,000 people from over 109 countries and earned upwards of $2 million. That was the early canary, if you will. That was the early attempt into trying to move and flip the live music concept kind of on its head. Since then, BTS, which is the largest K-pop band, actually had another concert, and they attracted more than 750,000 people, 750,000 people, who paid between $24 and $32 for virtual tickets and watched the concert. So just think about it: a band that didn't have to travel, that stayed and then recorded or live streamed from their studio in South Korea, was able to gross $18 million for a 2-hour concert. That's something that lots of artists are thinking about, not only as a way to continue to stay connected with their fans, but also as a potential future opportunity to generate significant revenues without having to physically go into different venues or tour around the world. In movies, and I mentioned the PVOD, or Premiere Video on Demand. So Trolls 2 was the first movie that completely bypassed theater distribution and went direct to video. It was a movie that was tailor-made for that release, targeting kids. It was a sequel, so already kind of well-established brand, and they generated over $100 million in the first 3 weeks of the digital release, which was actually more than the movie made during the original 5 months run in theaters. Lots of drama in the space, lots of movie theater operators were really upset with Universal for not only streaming directly to video, but also kind of talking about how successful it was. So, but again, it was the first attempt, and since then, we have seen Scooby-Doo movie went directly to skip theaters, went directly to homes, and right now is moving to HBO Max to try to help premiere of this new product. The King of Staten Island was the first R-rated movie that again went directly to to video, and there are some rumors that SpongeBob movie will be the third kind of family movie that might go directly to video, with movie theaters not opening up anytime soon on a national scale. You can expect even more studios trying to have a conversation about, do we delay and postpone release of our movie till late fall or maybe next year, or do we just go direct to video because we need revenue now? Something that's definitely worth following up. And then in live events, there's lots of new and old distribution models. So anything from social distance concerts that already started to happen to drive-in concerts, some of the geofencing, paid live streams, and then just fundraisers and donations. There's lots of attempts to recreate and fill the void that was left by not having any of the live events. Consensus is that those are niche initiatives and none of those will have the scale to truly replace the impact of actual live events. But definitely lots of activities happening, and there's lots of learnings that we are gathering from each one of those. To a degree, esports has helped to fill the void left by live sports, but it wasn't as big as many of us anticipated. So yes, there have been increases, and here you can just see some of the searches that indicate interest in different games. Yes, there have been increases, but playing video games is had the highest number of responses for the question, which of these activities do you plan to do less after the pandemic? So there is slight burnout factor, and people are definitely eager and ready to come back or go outside of their homes. And video games, as well as spending time on social media and streaming and watching TV, are the categories that people believe they'll do less of, or they're willing to do less of, with less time being spent at home. The live events closure. So initially, it was a fairly broad bipartisan support. March 19th, 24, Pew Research, the question was canceling major sports and entertainment events the right choice? And you see overall 91%, and then the 87, 95% still kind of, fairly close between the respondents that lean left versus lean right. Unfortunately, and especially over the past couple of weeks, that became a hot political issue, which worries me because historically live events, sports, music, theater were places that people came to get, kind of to stay together. And right now there's lots of divisive conversations happening. The latest study from Civic Science, the first question, if your state and local government issues a notice to go back to normal day-to-day activities in order to prevent any further negative impact, you can see significant changes between people that lean strong Republican, 56% say, I would resume all of the most normal activities, versus only 13% of strong Democrat, lean Democrat answering the same question. The flip, I would remain quarantined, almost exact opposite. So 46%, nearly half of left-leaning respondents declared that they would still remain quarantined. Only 14% of the right-leaning respondents said so. I think the interesting challenge from communication perspective, how do you message and how do you manage the communication to make sure that A, you're not being caught into some of those political war of words, and B, that you are being effective in communicating the right message to the right audiences. Follow-up question, and again, it was the same survey. How soon from now would you be comfortable going out to eat at restaurants? And again, you see here the conservative is in the red. So now, or in 2 to 3 weeks, almost half of right-leaning respondents responded, I would go now in 2 to 3 weeks, versus only 14% of liberal respondents. 4+ months, 32% of liberal respondents, 18% of conservatives. So again, and we can see those differences not just based on the party affiliation, also based on geography. But unfortunately, wearing a mask became like a political referendum versus something that we can all, as people that put events kind of together, embrace or kind of recommend that our patrons do. There is pent-up demand. I didn't want this presentation to be all kind of the negative news. There's definitely pent-up event. The percent of Americans who miss attending events like concerts, theater, and sporting event, you can see continues to increase, and it's much higher than watching sports on TV, going to a local coffee shop or gym, working out. And the desirable audiences, if you will, younger males, higher household income, over-index on missing sports. So there's definitely pent-up demand. However, there are certain expectations as well. So first of all, fairly high percentage of people indicate that as much as they miss going to sports or to going to live events, they're willing to wait a little longer. So, and a number of surveys kind of shows that only about 20 to 25%, so about a fourth, indicates that they will go back right away. And those are probably your super fans. Those are your season ticket holders, people that really miss sports. The casual fans, or people that maybe come less frequently, are willing to wait a little longer and make sure that it's safe. So again, if you open, will they come? It's not a kind of as simple as a yes/no question. It will vary. Another two categories that are worth paying attention to: households with kids. So most of the conversation that happens about kind of the reopening up venues talks about older audiences, or maybe people that might have some medical conditions or that are kind of predisposed to maybe catching COVID. Families with kids worry about bringing the virus back home. So there's little less willingness to come back quickly, as well as you see different ages happening. So again, how do you market differently to your rabid fan who's ready to come back right now, to the season ticket holder that maybe has held the same seat for 10, 20, 30 years, but worries a little bit about some of the health issues, and maybe there are some economic issues that they're dealing with. And then some of the new fans or casual fans, households with kids that you need to continue to build longevity of your brand, might have different requirements from messaging perspective. There's lots of research that's surfacing right now, try to go deeper into what will make people more comfortable. So kind of highlighting some of those. This is from MRC data. This is for broader live events. So what are the expectations? The top 5 measures for live events: hand sanitizer stations throughout the venue, to limited seating, open venues, outdoor venues, definitely over index versus smaller, older indoor venues, social distancing, limiting number of tickets sold, and then wearing a mask. And you see that there's a difference between the survey done between 420 versus 54, and kind of things indexing. Social distancing and wearing the masks were two of the answers that continue to increase in the responses over this time. This is for performing arts, theater, but again, applicable to any live events. A different cut into some of the necessary safety measures. And you see anything from sanitizing between shows and making sure that the venues are clean for every new attendee, to empty seats between ticket purchases, all the way down to temperature checks upon entry, fewer performances per week, limiting lobby access and concessions. And then there is a percentage of people that basically indicate that unless an effective vaccine is in the market and has been proven, they will simply not return. So again, not a one-size-fits-all question. My advice here, understanding and keeping in mind that everything is so local, is to make sure that you put forth a way to really listen and survey your fans. Asking questions. I've heard in college athletics, people using their call centers to, rather than try to upsell people or maybe like renew some of the tickets, to actually try to gather more information and really understanding what it is that your fans expect, what changes they expect, and what changes can you provide them with, and then how do you message when it's safe or safer to come back to venues. Some of the key signals. So this is a combination of lots of internal data from Google. Excuse me. This is a survey that we are running on a weekly basis. We started very early, March 18th. And it's a very simple question. We wanted to get directionally kind of a sense of what the live event attendees are going. And the filter question was, have you attended any of the live events over the past 12 months? So we are only surveying people that have paid for a ticket to go to live events. The first question, would you attend any live events that happen in the next 2 weeks? And you can see there's definite increase from early April or late March till right now, end of June. Right now, about 12% indicate that yes, they would attend. About 70% said they wouldn't. However, past 3 weeks between June 10th and June 24th, the percentage of no respondents have increased. And again, you can think of it, the news cycle really dictates how people feel about kind of the immediate willingness to go to an event. A more telling question is the same one, but looking at a different timeline. So this is would you attend any live event that happens in the next 3 months? And again, I want to highlight a couple of things. So first of all, and you see I circled the first week respondents and then the last week respondents. And they're nearly identical. 20% in mid-March versus 21% as of last Wednesday indicated that yes, they would attend any live event that happened in the next 3 months. 44% said no when we started surveying, and right now 47% say no. So in a way, we're back to where we were at mid-March when things really started to shutting down. There have been lots of movements in between, but we're kind of back to square one. Another thing I want to highlight is that a roughly third at any given time of respondents were unsure. This is the undecided audience. This is your casual fan that maybe leans kind of towards being a super fan, but has some concerns. And again, from marketing or communication perspective, I think it's extremely important to make sure that you deeper understand concerns of the undecided audience, and then have the right marketing strategy, right content strategy, to make sure that you communicate the changes that you make and that you make this audience more comfortable. It will be much harder to flip people that are hard no, the 47%, than people that are unsure about reopening up. I'm also very curious to see what happens over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And again, lots of news right now on the health side is not very positive. Some of the states are really cutting down on reopening. So that's something that we track on a weekly basis, and I'll work with Tom and Hannah and make sure that in the next month, we'll provide you an update on that. The good news for sports is that of the people that said yes, sports at 28% over indexes any other form of live event category. So sporting events, then movie screenings, concerts, plays, live theater. Live theater, especially Broadway, is in a really tough situation. Those are small venues in a very crowded environment with really hard ability to provide social distancing around entering and exiting venues. And a typical theater goer is an older audience, plus tourism. Tourism will be shut down for a long time, so Broadway cannot count on a tourist base. In college athletics, it's a little different. So sporting events, that's what you do. Lots of audiences tends to be a little younger, and then yes, there's a big alum network, but still most people that attend events are local, and maybe they drive up rather than having to fly to the games. So that puts you in a better situation than other forms of live events. I won't spend lots of time talking about sponsorship, but clearly it's being impacted as well. This is a projections research done by 2 Circles, which talks about on a global scale, a projected decrease of sports sponsorship by about 37%. And then also this realization that the analog LED logo exposure continues to be the one that suffers because there is no live events, or maybe you'll only be able to fill in a half of 30% of your stadium. And then lots of conversation about shifting towards more digitally driven and tangible engagement, where even if you are shut down, or even if you can only get in 20,000 people into your 60,000 person stadium, you can leverage your digital properties directly to work with your sponsors to try to drive audience engagement on their behalf. Just because people are not ready to come to venues doesn't mean that they don't expect, or that they don't anticipate or want to stay closer to their brands. So again, this is MRC data, and looking at 4 waves. I wanted to draw your attention to a couple of things. So first of all, willing to buy merchandise or music to support artists. Wave 1, 36% indicated their willingness to spend money to support the artist in means other than buying a ticket. Wave 4, that number increased significantly, 36 to 43%. Artist social media is important to me at this time. Again, increase from 34 to 40%. And then there is the almost demand that artists should continue to stay connected and set up virtual meet and greets for canceled events, or in some other way, try to stay connected. We're also seeing, and I talked about being closer to the community, 76% as of last wave indicated that they have helped small businesses and local communities affected. And then 55% found ways to support artists or local artists. So there's definitely desire to stay connected and stay engaged. I think it's very important as people start developing different media habits that they continue to pay attention or be aware of your brand. And again, especially the casual fans. The super fans follow everything that's happening around your football team, around the reopening plans. The casual fan might start developing different habits and think about spending their weekends differently. Regional activations continue to roll out. And again, I wanted to highlight some things because I think there's lots of interesting learning. So anything from Tobin Center in San Antonio, Texas, which reopened and is doing lots of social distancing, to the Dolphin Stadium, Hard Rock Stadium, doing a drive-in theaters. Over in Europe, in German Bundesliga, the games are being played without fans, but fans have ability to purchase and donate to charity the cardboard cutout of themselves in a stadium. There was a first couple races right now for NASCAR, and then attempts to basically to try to people assume the risks and by buying ticket. Here the example from the Donald Trump campaign, where again, trying to see if people are willing to take a risk and knowing exactly that they can still catch COVID, but still are willing to go to games. Global trends, this is information from the NFL. We tracked very closely the schedule release and the on sale for single game ticket sales. So first a takeaway, it varies by geography. Again, I'm kind of like reinforcing that. You see the green dots, kind of the larger ones. That's where there was lots of pent-up demand that was represented in volumes of searches that we have been seeing on Google. Good news for college athletics compared to other sports. College athletics from the year-over-year search volumes have fared the best. So there's still significant decrease, about 50% decrease in searches for NCAA football tickets. But if you compare it to pretty much all other sports where those have been outside of NFL, in 90% year-over-year decrease, there is more of a pent-up demand for college football specifically. And then looking at actual volume of tickets being sold as well as search queries on secondary marketplace, again, you see the schedule release, and there have been year-over-year increases in queries for ticketing related queries, as well as the week-over-week changes. A couple reasons. One of them, so clearly the Tom Brady effect. This is a comparison of Buccaneers tickets search query. The blue line is from 2019, the red one from 2020. And I highlighted the day that Brady signed with Buccaneers. You see that the 2020 searches were 25 times higher than from 2019. The other two bumps were schedule release as well as Gronk signing up. So there's definite interest and pent-up demand for those tickets. And again, those are transactional queries. Those are queries that had to include tickets or ticket in. So we know that it's more than just information gathering. Those are people interested in acquiring those tickets. Another example from Las Vegas. So definitely a pent-up demand. Same, the blue line 2019, the red one 2020. If you're interested, the bump in the blue line, that was when last year the Raiders London game was announced, but a huge increase and huge demand for the tickets, and actual Oakland Raiders are taking advantage of that, not only selling tickets, but also selling the commemorative breaks and trying to get the pent-up demand, monetize the pent-up demand and capture as much data of their new potential fan bases in Las Vegas, as well as some of the key feeder markets for them. Secondary markets respond to changing behavior. The drive-in concerts, the blue line, compared to football concerts. And this is just over since March 29th. So, I'm sorry, football tickets. I would have never guessed that there would be more searches for drive-in concerts than football tickets in late to mid-June. However, this past couple of weeks, that's what happened. Garth Brooks announced a big on-sale, big tour for the drive-in theaters, which drove up the demand significantly. And then you see the secondaries reacted to it right away. And we have seen ads being run from anyone from StubHub, Ticketmaster, Vivid Seats, and SeatGeek. So there's pent-up demand for small pockets of opportunities, and people are taking advantage of those whenever possible. Okay, so last part of kind of the conversation. So what now? Early on in the process, I think many of us have hoped for a V-shaped recovery. And especially in live events, right now, most people in a way resign themselves that it will not be a linear kind of the smooth up and to the right recovery. It probably will be choppy. So the choppy part might be different geographies will respond differently. It might be the fans will want to wait a little longer, so we'll have a different segments of our fan base returning a little earlier. So right now, the B2 or the A2 scenarios seem to be the most likely. And this is from McKinsey, kind of the scenario for the economic recovery. Wanted to highlight just very quickly two opportunities. So the short-term opportunity. For most of you, today is the last day of your last year's fiscal and you're starting the new year right now. We are talking to many clients that need to generate cash right now. So even though it's pennies on a dollar, doing things like leaning in on merchandising and selling merchandising. So Miami Heat, we have a quote, they actually started to sell lots of distressed inventory or the old kind of the jerseys and t-shirts from a couple years ago and started to do just basic e-commerce campaign, generating some of the cash flow. We have some of the universities and nonprofits that are running fundraising campaign, similar to what Oakland or Vegas Raiders are doing, try to sell commemorative bricks or try to get people to sign up for your season ticket holder wait list or just asking for donations to generate some of the cash in the interim. Longer term, it's really important to invest in content. So I would discourage you from spending any money on media till you actually have products to sell, but you can leverage earned and owned media to generate lots of opportunities. So this is just an example from YouTube, but you can extrapolate it to any other social media channel or your own website. Creating lots of content helps you twofold. Number one, it maintains the connection with your fan base, both super fan and casual fan, while they're waiting on the sidelines. The second thing, which I think is even more important, is that when you are ready to put your tickets on sale, when you're ready to start selling tickets or selling merchandise, you can re-engage those audiences. So rather than doing a broad marketing campaign for anybody, you can do things like remarketing, retargeting, try to re-engage and drive up some of the offers again outside of the paid through your earned and owned media. This is kind of the theme, and I saw this drawing or this chalk art in my neighborhood. Wave now, hug later. And I think it's extremely appropriate to live events, to college athletics. Very important to wave. Maybe not hugging right now, but kind of figuring out how to maintain the connection with your season ticket holders, with your casual fans, with your alums, with the students who maybe are considering whether they will be back on campus in September. So figuring out how to wave to them is very, very important. When you do it, hugging them will be much, much easier. And there's definitely pent-up demand. The question is more of when versus if. And with that, I'll stop presenting and we can switch to Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. This is Hannah from LEAD1 again. That was fantastic. I know that a lot of the information went by very quickly for a lot of these guys, so I just want to quickly reiterate that I do plan to circulate a recording of this webinar along with a copy of the slides and a PDF document within 24 hours of its conclusion. That being said, I highly encourage our audience members to go ahead and submit your questions. I've got a couple here already, so I'll go ahead and start with those. First off, when it comes to plays in theaters, do you have any inkling on if it's the venue or the people who would attend those? And would there be more interest if those took place in sports stadiums?
Great question. There's actually a research done by Shugel, I think, organization, both for Washington, D.C., New York, as well as kind of the broad, and they try to answer that question. So, and the answer is both. So first of all, it's the audiences. So typical theater attendee, the older audiences really is concerned about getting sick. They also realize that lots of venues, the smaller indoor venues, are really hard to sanitize. So I actually think that offering up some of the theater production in outdoor environment, or maybe like at the stadium, will overcome some of those obstacles. And then there's lots of research actually that has been done that shows that larger outdoor venues, people would be more likely or more willing to attend versus the larger indoor venues. And then the small indoor venues are probably the hardest ones, or will be the hardest ones for people to comfortably attend and go to.
Great, perfect. Another one just came in. Would moving football to the spring be positively seen by fans? I'm sure as many have seen at this point, the Ivy League had thrown that out there. It's something that they're considering. What are your thoughts on that?
So actually, I'll answer that as a father of a high school level football player. So my kid, he was a junior, he will be a senior right now. They just started, so I'm in Michigan, they just started social distance practices for high school level sports. And given an option of either canceling the last season or moving it to spring, I would embrace the spring season. And I think that's what you will see with lots of fans. They especially the super fans, they want to experience the event. Of course, you have a set of logistics. So what do you do with other sports? What do you do with multi-purpose venues? But I do believe that fans want to attend live events, and if moving them from fall to spring gives them a higher likelihood of attending those events, they would accept it. There almost seems to be, most people seem to be resigned to the fact that there won't be lots of live entertainment in 2020.
Gotcha. Okay. Going along those lines, I actually wanted to ask you more so about, I know we talked about it a little bit beforehand. I know that I believe it was in the DC United Stadium, the MLS team, they had recently announced, or I should say DC Events announced, that they would be moving to essentially turn that stadium into a multi-purpose facility for the time being. They're going to create it into a drive-in, similar to the Garth Brooks scenario, I would imagine. Do you see, schools being able to do something similar? Should that be an advantageous opportunity that they should be a part of? Can you talk a little bit more about that? Yes.
So I know many, if not all of you, just finished the budgeting for this past season, especially next year. And many, if not all of you, are probably forecasting significant losses when it comes to kind of athletic departments for next year. On the other hand, think of all of the concerts and performing arts events that have been canceled, or maybe not canceled, rescheduled. There isn't enough venues in America to facilitate all of the rescheduled concerts. So I believe that will drive lots of interest from promoters, from the likes of AEG or Live Nation, to try to engage with many of you to see how they can field the concerts in the summer of 2021. And in the interim, do things like drive-in concerts or some of the social distance kind of events. So I definitely believe there's an opportunity that's happening over there, and also probably more willingness from athletic departments, which in the past weren't as willing to rent out their venues to big events, worrying about the turf, worrying about the wear and tear of the stadiums and arenas. I do think we'll see more universities leaning in and allowing to do it, because quite frankly, it might be one of the few incremental revenue generating opportunities that you will have an access to.
Great. Okay, a couple questions just came in. Do you think that fans will feel more comfortable with plans for a lower number of people attending so that social spacing or social distancing is available to them?
It's a qualified yes. So looking at some of the data shows that in the US, the social distancing is actually fairly widely accepted. There is a minority, but the vocal one, that tries to kind of push the reopening up without any restrictions narrative. So yes, I believe that providing social distancing, providing kind of the sitting in the different areas can be useful. I also think it allows venue operators to be innovative and to think about different ways of pricing tickets, seating people together, providing premium experiences. Maybe that includes the VIP access, kind of the entry and exit from the venue, and so on and so forth. And then also maybe there's a way, if you have a big enough venue, to actually separate and to provide social distancing, provide kind of the seating for audiences that want it, and then have a section of the stadium that allows people to kind of go back to the experience they're want to experience and willing to take a risk that's being carried with that.
Definitely. Another question came in actually asking if you can clarify the point that you made earlier about college sports being the most searched, I guess, entity within sports. How do you gauge this at Google? What are kind of the measures for that?
Yes, so we were looking, it wasn't the absolute number of searches. So when it comes to that, professional or the NFL continues to be king, if you will. The college sports year-over-year decrease was the lowest, if you will. So on relative basis, it continued to be fairly popular sport. So MLB or NHL or NBA searches have decreased about 95-98% year over year. College football searches decreased about 50% year over year. And again, we are looking at buckets of keywords that historically indicated for us that people were in the market for either tickets or entertainment around different categories.
Great. And then I have a comment here, follow with a question. Just saying that it's great to see the changing sentiments over time with all the data that's been presented. Some of the information was as of late May, and it seems as though a lot has been changing over the past few weeks with the unexpected surge still happening in the first wave. When do you feel you might have updated data as, quote, as of late June? It will be fascinating to see continuing changing consumer perceptions. And then here's the main question. Do you perceive that we could regress on our survey results to consumers being less optimistic than at the start of the pandemic?
So great, lengthy question. Some of the aspects of data collection we control. So the weekly survey that I run, we have direct access to it, and we can kind of gather data literally as it happens. All of the search query volumes or what people are searching for, that's data that we also have kind of on a daily basis. Other parts, I'm relying on the third party. So the MRC research, for example, that's something that Billboard is running, and I think they do it on a monthly basis. So again, it's kind of the qualified. However, I agree with the premise of the question, absolutely. Data is changing rapidly. And again, right now, I think between the Memorial Day opening, right now, the 4th of July, lots of conversation about Arizona, Florida, California, some of the states that kind of led with the reopening and right now are pulling back. So I fully expect the short-term sentiment to turn a little more negative, and then kind of we'll kind of see what happens. Also, another question, I think the big one is with college football specifically, is when will some of those tickets become on sale, or when you will start having the teams kind of becoming ready for the season, because lots of conversations will happen around that. Unfortunately, past 2 weeks, the headlines for the college football were not positive. They were around number of players that have been found to be positive, or maybe some of the slowdowns. So again, it's very cyclical, and the news cycle definitely dictates the short-term, especially sentiment of the surveys.
Yeah, perfect. I've actually got two questions that came in actually surrounding kind of the same issue here. Can you expand a little bit more on the OTT short form videos? I know that college athletics departments are really relying on this right now. What more do you think, or what in addition to do you think athletics departments could do on the OTT front?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So there's a pent-up demand for entertainment, and people cannot fulfill it by going to games. So they're trying to consume as much content as possible digitally on YouTube. So YouTube is experiencing, the record traffic, and there's lots of desire for content. I think that the difference is that right now there's no highlights because you have no games. So relying on anything from the social, kind of the special interest, kind of, the storylines around athletes to doing something historical, going back into your archives is something that we can definitely do. Short-term content, yes. But again, because so many people consume the video on their laptops or living room TVs versus just phones, I would continue to go with mixture. So yes, provide the 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 kind of snackable content, but don't be afraid, if you can, to put some of your old games from 50, 70, 80 years ago in their entirety on YouTube. Don't be afraid to put some content that maybe it was sitting kind of in your archives. If people have time, they'll find it. But yeah, definitely lean in on video and social media to try to continue people engaged. Yeah, it's great. And then I guess, as we kind of get into what will hopefully be a football season or whenever that does happen, do you think that COVID will contribute to the trend of people staying home as a form of watching instead of attending the games, as they normally would? Do you think that this opens up opportunities for pay-per-view streaming or more of that OTT content that you mentioned? Yes, and this is an example of the trend that has been happening for a while. And when money rolls in or there's lots of revenue, it's kind of sometimes easy to just skim over some of the trends. So the reality is that for most of you, attracting your student population to come to games was a challenge, or having students stay for entire game was a challenge. So yes, having content, having sports on TV, actually that's another thing I'm really curious about. Right now, all of our survey happened when there was no sports. Starting actually right now and the next couple of weeks, there will be sports on TV. So for me, what will be really interesting is to compare some of the responses of people, of your fans, about their willingness to come back to games, or maybe they will realize that the TV experience is much, much better. That's one aspect. Another one, the economic impact. Again, I think it's something that's very important to keep in mind as people worry about their paycheck, worry about their dollars, as companies are significantly cutting down on travel and their entertainment expenses, as your group tickets sales will basically disappear for the next 2 years, because it'll be very hard to persuade a local school or a charity, a local church to send 50 of their members to a game. There probably will be less revenue coming from tickets, or the average ticket price, I anticipate, will have to decrease, for example, to try to get people in. So economic concerns and then health concerns and increased quality of TV content will probably accelerate the fact that more people will be choosing to watch the game from their home versus watching it live from the stadium. Great. All right, I've got 2 more questions here that will close us out. The first, what happens if there is no vaccine? That's kind of the big scary question in the room right now. That is a great question. Part of me doesn't want to think about it. I have a full confidence in the science aspect that eventually there will be a vaccine. I think if there is no vaccine, we'll learn to live with it somehow, because we are very adaptive. However, live events will be the last thing to come back to, or being with thousands of other people with no kind of non-vaccine will be, again, probably the last thing that on a macro level people will choose to do. So from that aspect for sports, I think there'll be way more sports on TV, and hopefully ability to figure out how to play the games kind of for TV, but the live attendance will be significantly decreased. Great. And then this is actually a great question to close us out. If you were heading up an external unit or a marketing/development department for an athletics department at a Division I institution, what would be your 1 or 2 primary focuses as it relates to connecting to fans? The first one would be to try to really gather as much information from your existing fan bases. So what I provided here is great. It is a macro level. So doing surveys, doing abilities to actually talk to to your fans, understanding what's happening in a local environment, sharing information within the same state, the same geography, is the first thing. After having that information, crafting the right marketing message. So how do you communicate effectively? How do you address some of the concerns that people might have? What do you lean on to try to get people excited? Is it the winning program? Is it the history of the program? Or is it the fact that you have the newest state-of-the-art stadium that has been approved by the local healthcare authority? So kind of combining those two. And then the last thing, continue to stay connected. So that's the beauty of social media. That's the beauty of video. You have ability to create content. You might have to be creative because again, there's no highlights, but staying connected and engaging people is very, very important right now. And again, my last slide, wave now, hug later. Don't force people to have to transact with you right now. It will come off as kind of the tone deaf, and we probably won't have as many opportunities in the future. If you give them the right answers, or tell them you don't know the answers, that can be very effective.
Beautiful. Well, Mike, on behalf of LEAD1 and everyone in attendance today, I really, really want to thank you for taking the time. I know it's technically a holiday week, and I know you are extremely busy right now. So again, I just want to thank you for putting this together for us. And then as someone actually asked a question earlier, if this can be watched again later in the future, yes, it can. I will circulate this recording along with a written recap, and as I mentioned, a PDF copy of the slides that Mike used, both via email, and it will also be archived on the LEAD1 website. Expect it to hit your inbox within 24 hours. That's it from us. Again, thank you, Mike, so much. We really appreciated it today.
Thank you. Bye.